Hey everyone, my name is Brittany, and I want to welcome you to Clips of Candid Convos, where you can expect to hear about topics ranging from faith and family to some lighter discussions about relationships or even reactions. For those lighter discussions, make sure to stay tuned for our hashtag Keep It Light Friday episodes. I'm glad you're here, and I invite you to stay for a while. Cheers to good company, good coffee, and good combos. So let's touch on the topic of emotional neglect in relationships and how that comes about or how that affects relationships.
It really depends on the comprehension of the partners, right? Because so many people focus on communication being key and just openly being transparent and things of that nature. But I think that what gets neglected in saying that communication is key is that the truth is comprehension is key. I can speak my mind, I can discuss my boundaries, my values, and more or less my expectations in a relationship. Likewise, you can do the same for me. However, if one person has a hard time comprehending, then we really didn't get anywhere. So I would say that a lot of relationships, especially long-term relationships, struggle when it comes to just the emotional portion, right? Because everyone expects that relationships are to be dwelled in romance and desire and passion and all of these things that I feel are just pushed on to partnerships because of society and just conditioning, basically. Now, you end up in a situation where after being with someone for so long, you already have gone through the discovery phase of knowing what their love language is. How do they feel loved? How do they feel safe? How do they feel that the relationship fosters trust? And then there becomes the issue of like, well, now that I know all of that about you, what's next, right? Are you always going to be the same? The problem is that we don't ask. We no longer pry to get information about what has evolved in our partnerships. We go based on what we knew from a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And that sort of sets the tone for how we, I would say, engage with the person and how we expect the person to engage with us. But the truth is, there is no mind reading. You have to voice when something about you has evolved. When there is a desire for something else. Otherwise, you fall into a situation of emotional neglect.
So you said that you have to announce when there's a change, right? But I would argue that it shouldn't be something that's announced if you're on the same page. Because if I know all those things about you, like how you're saying love language or just how someone receives love, feels understood or whatever the case is, if you've studied that person, then you would know that something in them evolved. If you actually care. If you pay enough attention to the person that you're with, that means you know their habits. That means even if it's an emotional habit, when I do this, when I say this ticks them off. Or if anyone else does it to them, they might feel a way about that. So you understand what I'm saying? So if there is a change, you would be able to identify it if you care. Now, if you're emotionally neglecting somebody, you might even know that, hey, this ticks them off, this, whatever the case is, but you don't care, so it doesn't matter. And if they do start behaving differently, again, you don't care, so it doesn't matter. And they might do that out of defense.
Right.
They might change the way they receive things. It's like, okay, now since you're showing me you're incapable, even if I know that it's because you don't care, now I have to pivot the way I approach you. Now I have to change who I naturally am just to be able to continue to be involved with you.
For the most part.
I'm saying because you adapt to what that person's giving you.
But now the opposite to that is, what if your partner is emotionally unavailable? Take neglect out of the table.
Mm-hmm.
And you, in the beginning, cared enough to try to foster a relationship with this person that you knew was emotionally unavailable.
So you would say unavailable and neglect are two different things?
Absolutely.
Okay. I
Absolutely.
need to understand that, because to me it almost equates to...
So when I say unavailable emotionally, I mean this person has faced certain things that have conditioned them to be a certain way. They may be the passive aggressor because that's how they adapted, as you said, to their environment, to what they were dealing with at the moment. This person may be emotionally unavailable because this person has not developed transparency in any other relationship. So you're forcing them outside of their norm, and they're doing it because in the beginning there's so much excitement. There's so much value in new. Why do you think people do things in habits to seek new? Shopping for new. When we go out to buy a white t-shirt and we have 20 at home, we're not buying a white t-shirt because we need it. We're buying a white t-shirt because, wow, it is new.
So it's not genuine. That's what you're saying.
It could be disingenuine, but it also can be their adaptation to how they feel about you. It doesn't have to be disingenuine. In many cases, it can be found out to be later on that the person was disingenuine. They were just trying to do whatever they thought they needed to hook you.
Right.
Right? Hook, line, and sinker. But the fact of the matter is that not everyone is like that. And what I'm able to acclimate to, the next person may not be able to. I'm willing, ready, and able to evolve. And I'm willing, ready, and able to be honest. So what about when they don't want to speak the uncomfortable truth?
So then that would be... So you're saying that's emotionally unavailable if someone behaves that way, where they're literally incapable.
Exactly.
So emotional neglect, you're saying the difference is that it's someone that's capable that's choosing not to.
Exactly.
So on one hand, someone is not able to do it off of just ignorance, let's say.
Yes.
And then the other person is neglecting you, even though they know this is really what you need. Like, right. I know you need a hug right now, but I'm withholding.
Yes.
Just because I'm doing my own thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's where you have a trickle-down effect, right? Because if you're supposed to be my person, and as you said, we have taken strides to learn one another. And for whatever reason, whether it be the cares of this world, the cares of desire outside of the home, the attention that you're seeking, the feeling of new and refreshed, right? Everyone on the outside is going to seem like an experience. Everyone on the outside is going to seem like that cup of Dunkin' when you have coffee at home, right? Why is it that every time we hit the street...
It just tastes better?
What is it? It just tastes better.
Wow.
Why? Because it's not what you have at home. It's not mundane. It's not the norm. It's not your everyday. It's not your habit. It's not what is available to you. So there's an excitement about what's not in the home. How are we repairing that within our relationship? And if we're not talking, again, about being transparent, having the uncomfortable conversations, and I'm not saying that I am perfect in any way and that I have always done that, but I've gotten to the point where emotional neglect has opened doors for things that I no longer want to do. It has literally put me in a chokehold to get me back in the trenches, you know? It has dragged me into this cave of uncertainty where I want someone else to make sense because what I have chosen to place myself in and remain in doesn't.
Because of the vulnerability. The
right.
place of vulnerability that it leaves you in. So it's almost like, well, if you're not going to protect me, for the most part, people can understand. If a woman cheats on you, that's because emotionally something is off.
Right.
Like, typically, you're not, There are women that do that just,
They do
offer
it.
themselves to
Yes.
anybody. But if a woman turns away emotionally, you're in trouble.
Yes.
You're in trouble. I heard someone say this. They said, as a man, you understand that, you need to protect. Society even tells you, you need to protect. You could be godly or worldly, but as a man, your role is to protect. So in your mind, you're thinking, I need to protect you from a potential predator physically. However, what about all of the other areas? What about emotional protection? What about spiritual protection?
Girl.
What about mental protection? What about all of that? You're leaving your woman vulnerable to all the elements, we can say.
Right.
Think about the trenches. Yes. If you're in the trenches, you're trying to hide from the bombs, the explosions here and there. If you are leaving me susceptible to that, I'm not making an excuse for it. Because whether they're there out of being genuine or not, if someone else comes to protect, I mean...
Now we have problems. Right.
It's almost like, don't be mad. I'm not saying it's right. I'm only saying you cannot blame. If another person wants to step up,
there's rationale
don't
behind
be mad.
The choice. Right.
That's all. It's not... And if you do care, you can rightfully take your place by, guess what, getting rid of that outsider and you becoming what you should have been.
Right.
The genuine protector. Because if she's already emotionally attached herself to another man, the right thing is not to... I understand you can be angry, right? But the right thing is not to be angered towards her, because you have to take accountability. Likewise, she would have to take accountability if she allowed herself to get to that point to even seek that out in someone else. That's the importance of who? Jesus Christ himself, of God.